What's up, everybody? We are back. Welcome back to our last JPD of the month on communication. Today we're going to be talking about feedback, and you've probably grown tired of all my Puma shirts, so I switched to a little Grateful Dead Big Bertha for you. Feedback can be a controversial topic. Depending on the tack that you wish to take. For this discussion, I'm going to give you some general thoughts, some of my thoughts, maybe a little cerebral at times, and we'll dispense some practical tips. So, what is feedback? In my own words, feedback is it's a system. You do something, there's a result, the result is measured. There's an assessment of what you did based on those results. Feedback, then, is the input back to you that either corrects what you did because the results did not attain standards, or the input attempts to improve what you did to yield even better results. Therefore, feedback is a mechanism to change behavior, and in the context we often use to improve behavior for the better. We'll go with this definition for our discussion. I'm going to take a short detour here because as I frame this video, I realize that I'm painting myself into a corner with my logic. Someone will say, but isn't the standard good enough? The minimum wouldn't be the minimum if it wasn't good enough. Bro, valid. I read you loud and clear. In a moment of reflection, I'm realizing that the rest of this video is dedicated to the idea that we should always be improving, that the minimum is a starting line, that to excel in life, we need to excel in the now. That's where I'm coming from. So like I said, I hope you walk away with some good nuggets, and even better if you want to jump on the success train and elevate your game. So, that being said, with this mindset, an invalid type of feedback is keep doing what you're doing. We've all heard it, and I'm sure I've said it to some degree. I'll talk more on this, but if you think about it, that's really the worst type of feedback. No feedback at all. Just weak advice disguised as guidance. Either you fall short of expectations, or you can improve on good performance. Telling someone to keep doing what they're doing is waving a white flag in the face of progress and a submissive default to the status quo, typically out of laziness. We'll put a pin in that for a second. Assuming feedback is a benevolent act that is dispensed to help someone improve performance, then it is for a greater cause and altruistic. And to be effective must have greater meaning. If the cause itself is good, say job performance, flying proficiency, etc., then feedback should be unemotional in its observation, agnostic. Proper feedback is not bad or negative. How can this be? It's because your feedback starts at the beginning by establishing objective criteria. By its very nature, objective criteria is cold and emotionless. It simply is. Therefore, if someone falls short of that standard, we identify the deviation, establish the root cause, and provide a fix to get the member up to standards. If someone meets or exceeds the standard, we shift the goalpost. In pilot training, we would say that we need to get you from an unsatisfactory to a fair, to a good, to an excellent, to an outstanding. In our world, we meet the standard, we master it, then we instruct, then we evaluate. Even beyond, we shape people to go on to master standards and then develop new ones. It is a line of constant growth and cannot be static if done correctly. Giving and receiving feedback can be awkward and uncomfortable, but mostly because we let emotion and ego slide into the equation. If our providers are benevolent and our receivers understanding of the ongoing struggle to constantly improve, then we can foster professional relationships. This is the bedrock of professionalism, understanding that perfection is unattainable, but we all strive for it. that the standard is fixed, but something we should never be satisfied with. Through it all is truth, not quibbling, not excuses, but a firm desire on both sides to attain the standard, but also to keep moving forward. This is illustrated in Bloom's taxonomy, where we aim to ascend through skill levels. Even reaching the top, we then graduate to levels of devising and refining standards for even greater levels of performance. This whole line of thinking was constructed to illustrate the simple point that you never arrive. There's always room for growth. Therefore, proper feedback, as we said, is never negative. You may hear that you did something wrong, but if done correctly, you will receive a practical fix, which is a moral good. You may hear that you did something right, but here's how you can do better, which is a moral good. As you can see, the feedback is agnostic. It simply aims to move you forward. It simply is. And it's for moving us higher and higher towards greater levels of proficiency and understanding. We have established mechanisms for feedback. ACA forms, evaluations, etc. Realize that feedback is an ongoing process, inherent in every interaction. It just doesn't happen twice a year. Here I'll provide some tips, not a roadmap, but some useful points to enhance the experience. In the beginning, set expectations, or else there is no anchor. Establish left and right limits to allow the other person space to operate and take risks. Create a comfortable environment when providing feedback, unless, in a case like administering discipline, you intend to convey otherwise. In short, be deliberate in choosing the setting. When providing feedback, ensure you are objective. Convey your good intentions and reference the expectations you have set as a measuring stick. Speak in terms of we, as this is a team effort to attain and surpass expectations. This builds trust and professionalism. It fosters a community standard, what the Double Deuce family is built on. Be honest, unemotional, but at the same time compassionate and willing to help. When framing feedback, keep it objective and specific. Use the SBI model. S, situation. It anchors the feedback in time and place and helps the person receiving the feedback understand the context. Not, you've been messing up lately. Great. What, where, when, how. These are the things we should be concerned with. B is for behavior. It lets the receiver know specifically how they behaved. Behavior is something that can be recorded visually or orally, not your attitude sucks. Well, how did it manifest? In what ways specifically are we talking about here? And then the I is impact. It consists of thoughts, feelings, and actions we take as a result of people's behaviors. So consider the impact on emotions, on a task, or the group. At this time in this place, you did this, and this was the result. And here's how you fix it. That's good feedback. We beat this up already, but feedback need not be considered a negative. There's nothing wrong with paying someone compliments when they're deserved, or even showing gratitude for a job well done, even if the performance is that person's job. You know the type I mean, the supervisor who says, "Why should I thank them for doing what they're supposed to do?" Well, in the business, we call that positive reinforcement. And to assure continued performance, we should recognize it. Showing a little gratitude for people's effort goes a long way in ensuring continued performance and builds rapport that will make them open to feedback for improved performance. This need not be flattery. Be sincere. People detect BS better than most things, so you need to find the mindset that allows you to demonstrate gratitude and soften your approach. Taking a break, word from our sponsor. Sometimes our sponsors are serious and sometimes silly. This is serious. Bevmo Vacaville is open again for in-store shopping, and as always, they have the 5-cent sale going on, which is basically a buy one, get one on a large selection of wines, like this one here. a McLean Vineyards Cabernet Sauvignon from Paso Robles. So, if you're of age, check it out. All right, receiving feedback. So, I've tried to establish that feedback is not a negative thing, even though one might take it as an aspersion or an attack on them personally. The battle is fought in the mind of the receiver. So realize that feedback, even for substandard performance, is not an attack on you. It's a mechanism to address and adjust behavior. Your behavior or performance may have sucked. That doesn't mean that you suck. You are a valued member of the Double Deuce team, and we have the resources and personnel dedicated to your success. When presented with an objective assessment of your performance, accept it as such, and be grateful that you're receiving the time and attention and that you're being held to such a high standard. Truth can hurt, especially if you think you're meeting the standard. Feedback can hurt, especially if you think you're perfect. It helps a ton if you can objectively realize the standard on your own and realize that perfection is unattainable. So you'll always be working towards something. Check your ego at the door. Reject the ego. Ego is an obstacle to remove and an enemy to improvement. Asking for help or admitting fault is not weakness. It doesn't make you a punk. It makes you humble and better prepared to receive instruction and thrive. Be reflective and try to find the root cause of your behavior. Understand the standard and learn to recognize it in your own performance. Think about what you can control and get after it, employing the fixes your feedback should have provided, and be willing to do the work to improve. There's a story about a biodome experiment, minus Pauly Shore, from the 80s where trees grew to a certain height and then would topple over without fail. Researchers realized that without wind, a variable they had not accounted for, there was no resistance for the tree to fight against, developing an extensive root system and would collapse under its own weight. Feedback is your wind. Lean into it. Grow strong roots. Don't quibble or make excuses. Trust in your leadership's experience and perspective. We're working for the same thing, your success. You don't harbor resentment towards the weights at the gym for being weights or the bar that holds them. Your supervisor and their feedback is the bar. Use it to lift the weights being the adjustments you need to make to reach success. We've pried the IG away from Mick T long enough to talk with us on Thursday. Here's some homework questions to consider about feedback, your thoughts and experiences. What are the best and worst feedback sessions you've had? How do you feel about our system of feedback that we currently employ? And when and why do you give feedback? This is the end of our first month of Joint PD, and I hope you like the talks on communication. Next week, the enlisted leadership will be putting together a presentation, so I will see you all the second week of July. As always, pass us your feedback. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you, and we'll see you around.